Okay, so far we've been introduced to the basic concepts of having variables, space, and memory to temporarily store information while the program is running, assigning a value to a variable. This is initializing it, assigning initial value. Here I read in a value from the console object, keystrokes, I'm assigning to this variable, this memory space H, to be used in this program. I'm also writing out messages to the console object using the function WriteLine, which takes a parameter, data that I pass to it. In this case it takes a string, so I pass it in the quotation marks. That's because it's a string, which is an array of characters, number of characters. We learned about using if, else if, and else, and we end that if statement. This is selection. And we also learned that we can put a comment in here that will be ignored by the compiler and not compiled into machine code. So this is selection. So we have sequence, doing one statement after another. We have assignment, assigning a value to a variable. And we have selection. If something's true, then do one thing, otherwise do another thing. Another important construct, basic construct in programming, is iteration. Iteration is repeating a set of instructions. So now we're going to use a for loop. Just put that in my comment there. And I'm going to say for I. Now I is built in and can be used in a for loop. This is just basically a variable of type integer. And I can say for I equals 0. I'm going to initialize it to take the value of 0 to 3. And you see, as soon as I press enter, it puts the next in for me. What this is going to do, it's going to loop around from 0 to 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. And what I will do is I'll type in console.WriteLine, and I will pass it the value of I, the variable I. Now in this case, we're using console.WriteLine, and we are, just come up a bit here, we're using console.WriteLine. But this is not a string, this is an integer, so we don't have to put it in double quotes because it's an integer and not a string. Only string is passed to WriteLine in double quotes. And let's see what happens here. I've got my read line here to hold the screen so I can see it, and I'm going to run it. And I get 0, 1, 2, 3. So starting from 0 and counting 3 actually repeats 4 times. If I want to repeat 3 times, I could start at 1. And I would get 1, 2, 3. But generally, you have to get used to, in programming we start at 0 because all of these memory spaces are valuable, and the counting system does actually start at 0, though we're used to starting at 1. Now, what I could do is I could count to 10, and I could step up by 2. So that's going to increment by 2. So let's look at that. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And what this means is I start with an integer called I, and I say I equals 0 to 10, and I'm going to go up by 2. So I write the value of I come to next, and what's happening with the for statement is it will automatically add 2 onto the value of I, so I starts at 0, so now I is assigned the value of I plus 2. I could do this with another variable. This is a for loop, and you can use I by default, but I could say dim x as integer equals 0. Let's get rid of step 2. Let's just go up by 1 for now. And I could come over here and I can say while x is less than or equal to 10, this is my terminating condition, and then I'm going to say console.WriteLine. I'll pass the value x, and then I'll write out the value of x, and then I will say x is assigned the value of x plus 1. I will increment it by 1. And now what we're going to do is run this, and we will see that 0, this is the for loop counting from 0 to 10, and this is the while loop counting from 0 to 10. They perform exactly the same function. But in this one, the for loop is because we have to loop a certain number of times often, the for loop is built into the programming language, and it recognizes the variable I, and we don't have to declare that. And also the next statement, this bit here will increment it by 1 by default, or if we do step, it will do it by another value. Whereas with x, when we use the while loop, we have to declare the variable, and we initialize it. Then we say while x, this is our terminating condition, while x is less than or equal to 10, so while this Boolean expression is true, we're going to keep doing whatever's in this loop. So we'll go from line 12 to 13 to 14 to 15, and in 15 we'll come up here and we'll check to see if our condition is true, and if it remains true, we'll keep going. In this, within this loop, we assign this the value of x plus 1, so we're changing the value of x each time, and then we're re-evaluating the expression. If I don't change the value of x each time and run this, I will have an infinite loop. I will have no way of coming out of this loop because it will keep repeating, but the value of x won't change, so it will never be greater than 10. And here we go, and it's running and running and running and running, and I'm going to stop the program now by pressing the stop button. Okay, thank you.